What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, February 17th, 2020, start of a brand new week. It is also President's Day, which, as I understand it, this is a day when the president comes out of the White House, and if he sees his own shadow, we get 6 more years of war and economic decay. I think that's how that's supposed to go here. All right, it's also, we're just now this second about to see the resumption of the Daytona 500. Yesterday, of course, was supposed to be the race, and Trump was the grand marshal and gave a speech about God and home and flag and, you know, the rest of it, and did a lap around the track in the Beast, his armored limousine. The planes are flying over. They flew Air Force One over there. And then the thunderstorms came on in and they said, we're going to have to postpone this. So it's about ready to start again, and hopefully they'll make it all the way this time. All right, now, I think the big news from over the weekend, and it may not be what it appears to be at face value, but Drudge Report broke the story that according to insiders in the Bloomberg campaign, he is considering asking Hillary Clinton to be his running mate. Supposedly the polls are showing that a Bloomberg Clinton ticket would be formidable. And this may have been a trial balloon, and the reaction has been overall pretty much negative. Former Clinton advisor Dick Morris basically said, before you put Hillary on your ticket, better hire a food taster. And that was kind of the tone of pretty much everything. I mean, does Bloomberg have a death wish? No, Bloomberg, get your Kevlar around you. Stay out of small aircraft. In fact, stay out of big aircraft. As I said, this may be a trial balloon. It may also be a distraction because this last week, toward the end of last week, a whole bunch of, shall we say, misstatements surfaced from Bloomberg's past. Racist comments, sexist comments, misogynist comments, and it was really starting to go viral. And then all of a sudden, Hillary was thrown into the mix, and everybody was scurrying off of, oh, is she going to be the vice president? I certainly hope not here. But apparently, a lot of Bloomberg's remarks are worse than Trump's Access Hollywood tape. So we're coming up here for Super Tuesday, 14 states from March 3rd, and the scrutiny of Bloomberg and his past record on the issues is intensifying. Right now, Bloomberg is in 3rd place behind Bernie Sanders and former Vice President Joe Biden heading into Super Tuesday. So anyway, now, one of the comments that Bloomberg supposedly made was one of his employees announced that she was pregnant. Huzzah, huzzah, should be cause for celebration. And instead, Bloomberg reportedly suggested to this pregnant employee that she should kill it, and then complained that pregnant employees are preventing him from making even more money than he already has. Poor baby, I guess he's having to dig under the couch cushions for money to go to lunch with or something. And it's a very inappropriate comment. Bloomberg is denying that he said it, but apparently there was some kind of a financial settlement with the young woman in question, or at least that's the report that we're getting here. Meanwhile, you have other opinions out here from Blabber Buzz. They're saying that there's zero chance that Bloomberg would actually pick Hillary as a running mate because too many people associate Hillary with the theft of the nomination from Bernie Sanders back in 2016. And we just don't like her. She's run for president twice. She's failed twice. I think that's the definition of unelectable right there. So I hope Bloomberg really comes to a sense if he really does pick Hillary, I would expect that something nasty will happen to Bloomberg in his 3rd year of his term. And the reason for that is there's a rule. If a president dies in office, when he dies in office has an impact on the future political aspirations of the vice president, now the president. Because if the president dies in the first 2 years of his term in office and the vice president takes over, that counts as the vice president's first term, and he can only run for 1 more after that. If the president dies in the 3rd or 4th year of his term, then the vice president comes on in. Doesn't count as a term, and he can run for the Oval Office twice more after that. So that's where that is coming from. Now, the other thing that Bloomberg did that has really roused a lot of ire is he belittled farming and factory jobs, saying that people who work in farming or factory jobs have less gray matter than people who work in information era jobs. Well, I can tell Bloomberg is a city guy because he doesn't know jack about farming, because it does take a lot of thought to be a good farmer, to be a successful farmer. You got to know all about the chemicals you're putting on your food if you're not an organic farmer. You got to repair your machinery because you're out there in the middle of the field. And really, he just insulted farmers, and he's not going to get their votes. Not going to get the votes from the factory workers. He may have just shot himself down with that one. But Bloomberg is still out there, and he's announced he will charge Americans with domestic terrorism for hate crimes if elected. Well, you're charging them with terror. What does a hate crime do on top of that? I really hate that term, hate crime. I really hate that term, because you assume that if somebody stabs somebody or shoots somebody or vandalizes their property, it's not an act of love. It really isn't. So why this idea of a hate crime? A lot of people hate. It's not a crime to hate. I hate child molesters, and I'm proud of it too. Somebody going to come and arrest me for a hate crime because I hate child molesters? I don't think so. Anyway, so and here's another one he said that's got people scratching their head here. Actually, two more here. Bloomberg said that the California can serve as a great example for the United States. Now, Bloomberg, of course, is running as a Democrat, and California is a disaster. feces in the street, needles in the street. Their economy is a shambles. And Bloomberg thinks this is the ideal. This is what all America should be, like California. I don't think so. I'm glad that Indiana isn't like California. Bloomberg then went on to say that if somebody is 95 years old and they have cancer, they don't waste time treating them. They're going to die soon anyway. Not making a good impression there, Bloom. All right. Now, the only good news in all of this, of course, is that Mike Bloomberg is spending a fortune of his own money trying to buy himself the presidency of the United States of America. And this has resulted in an unprecedented flood of campaign spending for TV advertising. And TV executives, they're happy as a clam in sand. The money is pouring on in. They're able to write bonuses and get new equipment. They're having a real good time about this. All right, Bernie Sanders is surging in the polls. He's now holding the #1 spot in a lot of polls all around the country, even though the Democratic Party machine does not want him as the nominee any more today than they did back in 2016. But apparently, Israel's lobby is spending a lot of money trying to sink his chances in Nevada. And Bernie right now, he's the Democratic front runner in the wake of Iowa and the New Hampshire primaries. And he's heading to Nevada, leading in the polls. But the Israel lobby and its cash reserves are arrayed against him. So with the Nevada primary just a week away, a Morning Consult poll published this week put the progressive senator 10 points ahead of Joe Biden. So see what's happening out there. And already we're getting word that some of the electronics that they're going to use for the Nevada caucuses may be as flawed and faulty as those used in Iowa. So, anyway. All right, so Buttigieg tries pandering to his Hispanic audience, and they started laughing at his fractured Spanish. If you don't really speak Spanish, don't speak Spanish to the Hispanic audience. They're going to know immediately you're just faking it. So he got laughed at. All righty. The impeachment trial of Donald Trump may be over, but federal officials are examining the behavior of former Vice President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. At least one major government watchdog believes the younger Biden may find himself in serious trouble. I would say so. There's a lot of evidence out there regarding Burisma and money being paid to Joe Biden's son simply because he was Joe Biden's son. And that's an attempt to buy influence by proxy. Anyway. The Department of, we've got a caller on the line. Let's go to Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Well, the Democrats sure have a big problem on their hands. I mean, Bloomberg, first of all, Bloomberg was a Republican at one time.
Yes.
Second of all, he's a billionaire. And, you talk about, like, chasing Bernie supporters away from the Democratic Party. If they like, pull a John McCain and all of a sudden, stop Bernie at all costs, and they throw all the fraud possible on Super Tuesday to get Bloomberg the nomination like they did with John McCain. I mean, the Bernie supporters are going to the convention will burn down. Where I guess it's in Milwaukee. I mean,
yes.
You might as well invest in marshmallows up there, because whatever you want to say about a lot of the energy in the Democratic Party now is with the left-wing populists, the Bernie supporters. I mean, you got to give them credit. It's like the Ron Paul supporters in the Republican Party, how much energy we had back in 2008, 2012, when the Republicans nominated McCain and then Romney, put everybody
Yes.
to sleep. And I just, I feel bad in a way, and I can't say I feel bad, but the Democrats really are in a bad predicament. I think they should just don't cheat and see how it plays out, but let Bernie win if he's going to win. I mean, you never know. The economy could collapse. The stock market could collapse, and a guy like Bernie could win. And next thing you know, we do have socialism, which is what most Democrats want. Not that I want that, but if I was a Democrat, that would be like my long shot hope for gaining power, because otherwise, I mean, Trump is just the brilliant showman. I mean, he showed that yesterday at Daytona, and
yes.
he's got celebrity, he's got the presidential look. Trump's got a lot going for him. He's got the power of the presidency. He's got all these indictments that are coming soon. He's being vindicated every day as far as the Russia hoax and the impeachment backfire, and so he's got a lot of trends in his favor. Though what worries me for Trump, though, is the economy. And they could do what happened with Bush. And Bush all of a sudden, when right before he left, and it looked good for Republicans, and then we had the economic collapse, 2008, and that basically destroyed McCain and any chance of Republican winning. But at the same time, McCain was a manufactured candidate.
Hang on. I think McCain destroyed McCain, especially when he picked Sarah, beauty queen Palin to be his running mate. I mean, I think she destroyed the credibility of his entire campaign. But you're right. The economic downturn did not help Bush.
Yeah, Sarah Palin, the vice presidential, she's not as bad as what was that guy, Angleton? He had mental issues. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah, she was a bit of a bumpkin, but it is vice president. It's kind of like I think Tim Kaine that Hillary picked was a complete disaster, but nobody really talks about it. His clown face and his weird mannerisms. But I thought with Sarah Palin it was a bit of a pile-on by the media, the same, group that was, looking to destroy McCain once he went against their darling Obama.
Yeah.
But once again, I'm enjoying watching it. But really, Michael Bloomberg, although he's got all the money in the world and he's trying to buy it, I don't know how, like, an honest Democrat. I mean, I know if I was a populist Bernie type supporter, he would just make my skin crawl that he can just buy his way in, and the establishment. It's really the interesting part of this whole thing is going to be what is does the establishment Democratic Party after Iowa, do they keep it up? Do they keep cheating Bernie out of it? Because if you ask me, Bernie should win if it was a fair fight, from here to California and all that. And, unless they're going to probably try to rally around one candidate, who's it going to be? Bloomberg, Buttigieg, Biden? Who they're all losers. They all have a lot of, like, baggage.
Yes,
so
they do.
Biden is a mumbling idiot, mentally totally deranged, the lying dog-faced pony soldier guy. Buttigieg, Rush Limbaugh was right. They tried to make an issue about it, but, I don't think America's ready for a first, a gay, openly gay president with a first husband. I don't think the country's ready for that. Bloomberg, he's got the whole. First of all, he's a Republican. Second of all, he's a billionaire. How does that fit in with the AOCs and all the energy that's been in the Democratic Party about the rich and all their and then it's coming out with him and his racial issues and his stop and frisk. And they're just getting started on him with in the sexist stuff that he, But once again, we have a governor in Virginia that's trying to take everybody's guns in Virginia that has a picture with blackface and in a Klan outfit, and I think he was wearing the Klan outfit myself. Like I said, I don't want to get into the whole blackface thing, but could you imagine if that was a Republican? Can you believe that he's still governor? It really amazes me that the Democrats are a party that will overlook something like that. But if it was a Republican, people would be pouring gasoline outside the State House on themselves and lighting themselves on fire, But no, he's a Democrat, and he's for, aborting babies after they're even born. So we'll give him a pass on the Klan outfit, But, only one person or one story. I've been monitoring the stories all about this firing of Jesse Liu, and only one story I read on the internet even really talked about what a big thing that really was and how it's being totally underplayed by the media. And when I think about Jesse Liu, I think about that commercial with the guy with the dollar bill, and he's holding it over the lady and said, "Oh, you almost got it," and yes. That's what Trump did to her. He nominated her for the Treasury Department so she would resign her position. So Trump ought to call her up and say, "Hey, I got a job for you at the Commerce Department this week," and then do it again to her, because what she did in Washington with General Flynn, and I've called him many times, really angry about what happened to General Flynn, and I'm just glad Trump got one of them. And meanwhile, they're all saying it's all about Roger Stone's pardon. That's why all the hysterics, but it's not. The real story is that he had her resign her position, and now they got somebody that's going to look into the corruption of the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., and pulled the rug out from under her right at the last minute. It's brilliant, and I'm hoping more of that will be happening shortly. And that's why you're seeing the hysterical aspects of this. The whole Roger Stone case means nothing. It's meaningless. And then they bring it up about tweeting. But nobody even talks about Jesse Liu and what happened to her. And that's like a huge story. I guarantee you in Washington, that's what all the people in the Department of Justice, that's what they're all concerned about.
Yep, I agree with you. Now, I want to step back to what you were saying about Virginia, because we're going to be talking about it a little later in the show. The legislature voted down the assault weapon ban that they were talking about. So it looks like the governor went a little too far, and apparently some of the moderate Democrats voted against it.
It really does amaze me how dumb Democrats can be at times. For years I always thought of them smarter than Republicans. But there's certain issues they should never. It's like, look what happened to Beto O'Rourke. He started talking about banning AR-15s, and his whole campaign just totally imploded. He went from like 15% to 0%. And it's the same way here. I lived in Virginia. I lived there for 10 years in Norfolk, and the people there love guns.
Yes.
But it's just the people up in northern.
Indiana.
Yeah, it's the people up in northern Virginia, the lefties that come out of Washington because it's so dangerous in Washington because they can't have guns, right?
Yes.
Then they move out to northern Virginia and they dominate the legislature and want to take away everybody's guns. And it's not, but what I look at is like, it's just a politically such a loser like issue for anybody. Just if you're going to do anything that.
Americans love their guns. It's like how the Japanese feel about their swords. All right, Joe, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Okay, the Department of Justice has opened a new investigation into James Comey, Andrew McCabe, he may not be out of the woods just yet, Peter Strzok, And this is all coming down from a former top Department of Justice official. And now all of a sudden we see why so many people are demanding that Attorney General Barr resign. You've got to resign. You've got to step down. You can't go after the deep state people. What's wrong with you? Do you remember Ghislaine Maxwell? She was sort of the, if you will, the procuress for Jeffrey Epstein. She went around finding these very young, nubile young women and tempting them down to Epstein's home in Florida and then to the little island paradise, as it were. And she is communicating with people by email, but her exact physical location isn't known. And lawyers are trying to find her to serve her with papers, and they can't find her. So the judge has taken the rare step of saying she can be served with a new lawsuit by email. They don't have to have somebody come up and slap the paper on them and say, you have now been served. It's going to be by email. All righty. According to the latest Gallup poll, more Americans now identify as Republicans than they do as Democrats. Looks like the Democratic brand is damaged here. All right, let's talk about the COVID-19 virus. That's the new official name for the coronavirus, for the Wuhan virus. And apparently there's been a little bit of a whoopsie because, as you know, there were a bunch of Americans, 300 US citizens, on the Diamond Princess, which is now docked in Japan, and nobody's being allowed off. But they got these 300 US citizens, were evacuated by plane from Japan and flown to military bases here in the United States. That's the good news. The bad news is 14 of the passengers on that plane tested positive for the COVID-19 virus. Now, they were kept in a separate area of the airplane, but let's face it, with the recirculating air and touching surfaces and whatnot, that was rather bad. And apparently they tested positive for the COVID-19 virus before they were allowed on board the plane, but they were allowed on anyway. And they just said, we'll draw a curtain here. You 14 all sit over here, and that'll be fine. With 300 people on the plane, there wasn't a lot of room. Now, Senator Cotton is definitely convinced that COVID-19 came from China's BSL-4 lab that is right next to that market that China is blaming for the origin of the virus here. And Cotton is saying China's refusing to hand over evidence about the Wuhan biolab. Well, I can sort of understand what's going on. When was the last time the United States handed over evidence about its biological weapons program to a foreign country? But Cotton is absolutely convinced that's where this thing originated. And before I go any further, I do want to emphasize, we're not getting straight information from either side. Everybody is pounding this for their own particular agenda. And the worst part is we don't know exactly what's going on. And not knowing is the sort of thing that tends to drive people crazy. All right, China's government is now imposing more policing, a web crackdown. They don't want people talking about what's going on in China. That to me is a really, really bad sign. And China's President Xi Jinping has called for tightened control over online discussion and increased policing to ensure, quote, positive energy, end quote, and social stability, according to state media. Sounds to me like they really do have a problem over there. And again, it's hard to commit and say, yes, this is going to be a major problem because we have been lied to. We were lied to about the when pigs fly flu. We were lied to about the SARS flu and MERS and the Kung flu and who knows what all else that's out there here. Now, mass quarantines are now starting to pop up outside of China. Vietnam put an area with 10,000 residents after a COVID-19 quarantine. So this is starting to look like it may, in fact, be a serious, serious situation. Now, 2 unusual COVID-19 cases were reported in Xinjiang County in central China's Henan province on Sunday. This is real close to Wuhan. And it shows strong contagiosity and whose sources of infection could not be determined. And the county has announced it will prolong the quarantine period for people who had been to Wuhan or contacted with Wuhan residents from 14 to 21 days after finding these 2 cases. So it's not a 2-week quarantine, it's now a 3-week quarantine. And an official Chinese newspaper is saying it's possible that you can get an infection 94 days after the first contact. That's pushing, like 3 months. So if that is true, anyway, there's a new research paper out there saying that COVID-19's R0 is now estimated to lie between 4.7 and 6.6. We got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I'm keeping an eye on what's going on down in Mississippi with the Pearl River that's just flooding, and I feel really bad for those poor people. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Tom in Florida, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Michael, aloha to you. Happy President's Day. I got
Happy
a few
President's
things on my
Day.
mind. Yes, sir. Yeah, Michael, first off, the media is going nuts because Trump took a lap around Daytona 500 track, and they're all complaining how much fuel the beast used. Donald Trump's the one that probably pays for the fuel in the Air Force One. He pays for the fuel in...
No, Tom, no. This is considered a White House function, and the taxpayers pick up the tab on all of it.
Well, I understand that, Michael, but Trump would pay for it if he had to. I'm sure he'd pay for the fuel on the one lap they're bitching about. I mean, excuse my French. But, I mean, come on, they're complaining about one lap in the beast. I mean, these demon rats have nothing better to do in the liberal media. But, by the way, Michael, did you see, did you have a chance to see the Washington on the History Channel last night?
No, I didn't. I meant to watch it and record it, but it got away from me.
Well, it's excellent. It's pretty good, but I must say this. It seems like all the actors mainly they're using now it seems like they're Jewish. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but, I mean, I think Washington looked a little different in the guy that was portraying him. But, it's kind of ironic. They actually are trying to really put Washington down in the beginning of this documentary. But, yeah, I guess it's going to turn out fine. But, I mean, the hatred I think these leftists have for our country is just beyond belief. And by the way, they had a thing on the news today, the smartest 4 presidents of the United States in history with IQ. First was John Quincy Adams. That was his father. And they have Trump with a question mark. And somebody said he has an IQ of 158 or something. And after that, it was, believe it or not, it was Jimmy Carter. Peanut Head had a very high IQ. But the first 2 smartest presidents we ever had, that's according to what they're saying IQ-wise, is Adams, Quincy, and the father. So that was kind of interesting. Well, Michael, here's what I really wanted.
Hang on. Where did Thomas Jefferson fit in on this scale? Because he was a brilliant man.
I believe he was I'm not 100% sure. I believe he was number 8 or 9.
How very odd.
Yeah, he was in the top, I believe, top 10, but he wasn't, believe it or not, Michael, this might really, I don't know if you can handle this one. Andrew Jackson was very highly IQ'd. Old Hickory.
Yeah.
He was I believe he was number 10, Andrew Jackson.
Okay.
He was a little lower than Jefferson, but I didn't realize he was very intellectual for his time. There's a lot of guys, a couple guys were assassinated presidents that didn't even make like a full term. They were very, very high. Ulysses, I'll put it this way, Ulysses S. Grant was the least educated IQ-wise of all of them. That's what they say.
Well, education and IQ are 2 completely separate things. You have people with... Yeah, okay.
IQ.
I was going to ask who was at the bottom of the list.
Yeah, that was Ulysses S. Grant. Now, Michael, here's the reason I really want to talk to you today. There's a few things, but here's the main thing. You know what's going to happen this Saturday night coming up on the 22nd? Have you heard about what's the latest that's going on with Corey Feldman?
Oh,
the
yes.
Raping of 2 Corys?
I am looking forward to that.
Yes. The raping of 2 Corys. Now, Michael, from what's going to be exposed from what I'm hearing, because this guy's saying there's a death threat against him everywhere he goes. He can't even walk out of his house, him and his wife. And I guess he's going to expose Hollywood like it's never been exposed. I was doing some little research, and I didn't realize this decadence and decay in Hollywood has been going back since the 1930s. It is that prevalent how much decadence and decay is in Hollywood.
It goes back further than that. It goes back further than that. I mean, you had, oh God, I'm trying to remember the name of, well, even during the silent film era, there were some of these scandals going on.
Well, they had a case with Sal Mineo. I don't know if you ever heard
Yes.
of him, Sal Mineo.
Yes.
Yeah, he was like one of the first cases that actually tried to expose the homosexuality of Hollywood. And I was reading up on that. That was very fascinating to read about Sal Mineo. And he was with them, James Dean and Rebel Without a Cause and did a few other movies. But
Yes.
it's really fascinating that what's actually how Hollywood has gotten away with utter murder. I mean, it's unbelievable. Hillary ain't got nothing on Hollywood. And so, that guy Joe's a good caller. And Friday he was talking about pretty heavy stuff with the FBI. Now I thought it was very intriguing. I listened to. Now he was pretty right on target on that, Joe, on the FBI and how they all basically started the G-Men and all that.
Yes.
But, the corruption there alone is now you got Avenatti guilty. You got, I think Weinstein is going to be found guilty. I think this guy Strzok is going to be found guilty, and Comey. But nothing's really happening to these people. Now, Michael, here's the real story. Have you saw today? Friday, about the MS-13 gang members got 27 years each.
Yep.
These guys listen, Michael, these guys cut the guy's head off. They cut his heart out. They threw him in a grave that was already dug, and they're giving him 27 years, and then they want to get stoned 9 years for lying. But they don't want to do nothing to the rest of these Democrats that lie every day, and then day in and day out. Nancy Pelosi should be arrested for tearing up the articles of Trump's speech. What happens to her? Nothing. To me, that was one of the most disgusting things ever because she's doing that in front of multiple millions of people. Insulting the American public like that. And all the people were there that night at the State of the Union. But you got these MS-13 gang members murdering American citizens left and right. Nobody's been arrested. Michael, they had on the news today, $36 billion, One American News, $36 billion has gone out of the United States, never to come back.
Right.
Where's the tax on that money? Who is allowing this? What? I mean, these Democrats should be put in, they should be rounded up, man, with the military. I'm serious. There's people are off their rocker, these Democrats. And you got rhino Republicans. Some. But what they're allowing to happen, Kate Steinle, Molly Tibbetts, on and on and on. The lady in New York, 92 years old. Nothing's being done. Nothing. Now, Trump sent out 100 special troops to the cities, the 10 cities, 10 each. He should be sending out 10 million of these special crack troops to stop this illegal invasion of our country. Do you agree?
I agree.
Yes. And, I would really like to know what the figure is on these special troops that Trump has, these crack ICE troops that he has. Is it 10,000? How many are actually in the government that actually can be sent to these cities to start doing their job? That Libby Schaaf and all these mayors and Pelosi and Feinstein, they should be arrested immediately.
They should. Under Title VIII.
They've got to be arrested, Trump. I hope Trump, if somebody that is listening, they need to start arresting these people. Now, our governor here in the great state of Florida on Saturday, he says we are not going to tolerate, we're having E-Verify. DeSantis is going to put E-Verify, but he wants it even stronger. Okay? And, Michael, I just got to say this to you. I know the other day you said you'd vote for Bernie over Trump. I think you would waste your vote in Indiana. Just go ahead and vote for Trump because it'll be a waste-to-throw vote because the state of Indiana is never going to vote for a Democrat, especially Bernie Sanders or Bloomberg or Doomberg, whatever you call that idiot, Doomberg. And you got that Pocahontas. Any of those Democrats are imbeciles. So, Michael, don't throw your vote away. And as far as Dustin goes in New Jersey, I hope that Dustin votes Republican because you know what? I really think that New Jersey is going to go Trump this time. It's going to go Republican in this 2020 election. I believe New Jersey is going to switch. I really have a feeling. I know Southern New Jersey is definitely going to vote Republican. I really think so. And I believe Minnesota and I believe New Hampshire are going to all go for Trump. I think he's going to blow them out in a landslide. because these Democrats are just too far left, communist, Bolshevik. And look at how, wait till we see this documentary, Michael, with Corey Feldman, the raping of two Coreys. Well, I tell you what, I hope it's going to turn out half of what I'm hoping it is. What about you?
Yeah, I'm hoping it too because, I saw a lot of that stuff going on in Hollywood. And unfortunately, back then, I was not in a position to be able to do anything about it. But yeah, I'm glad that Corey went public because it is a major problem. And it goes back to the very earliest days of the motion picture industry.
Well, you know what? I'm not really so hesitant to spend the $20 to go on to watch it, but I had a buddy of mine, so we're going to split the cost. He's going to pay 10, I'm going to pay 10. We're going to watch it Saturday. So I'm going to put my $10 in this to see what he's talking about. Because I believe millions of people are going to actually, split the cost with a friend or two, even if it's like $5 a piece. So I'd like to see what this Corey Feldman really has to say. I remember reading a scandal sheet years ago in the public supermarket, and they had a thing on, I think it was an Inquirer. He was talking about how decadent the Dark Angels really are in Hollywood. Is the most disgusting, thing I ever read on the Inquirer, actually. So we'll see. I would like to see what's going to happen on when he actually puts this video out. So it's only going to be a one-time deal, so I think it's worth $10. Check it out. So, and on that note, Michael, I know you probably got other callers, but I just got to say this too, Michael. As far as this immigration is going, I really am not seeing. I'm not hearing. I mean, Trump's sending guys. At least you heard about that. But I don't see nobody getting arrested. These arrests are coming, man. They have got to start arresting these people. Let alone just for the gangs that are in here, Michael. The insanity of what you're hearing, what thousands of people getting raped, murdered. I mean, this is unbelievable. Accidents with DUIs. It's just amazing. Insurance is so damn high. And everything. It's crazy. You know what I'm saying, Michael? It's just crazy.
Yeah.
It really is. And I'm going to watch the rest of the History Channel on Washington tonight. That was very interesting. He could have been the king, but he turned it down. He definitely, George Washington had the right to be the king. And, he didn't have the right, but he could have been because they were trying to actually force him into being the king. And he just wanted to be a president and get out. And that was it. I believe that was divine intervention on his part because who knows what. And Michael, I didn't realize how close he came to getting killed many a times in battle.
Yes.
It was this. It was providence that he didn't get killed in battle. It's amazing. Matter of fact, he got shot in the Indian War, and he had 3 bullets in his coat. I don't know if you heard that.
Yes, I heard that.
Yeah, they had that on History Channel last night, and yeah, Washington was and he was actually 6'2". I didn't realize he was that tall for them days. Oh
yes, he was a very tall man. When he went to the Philadelphia legislature, he would wear his military uniform. He lobbied to be made the commander-in-chief of the colonial army, and he got it, and he did a great job, and they made him president. But you're absolutely right. His soldiers offered to make him king, and he said no. It reminds me of this line in the miniseries about John Adams, where Adams becomes the president, and Washington says, well, I am truly out, and you are truly in, and time will show which one of us is the least happy.
Yep, that's right. John Adams had another great saying, like I told you, I think I told you show before. He said, one of his first things he said when he took the presidency from Washington is, now with this new citizenry, you will be a citizen with a gun, and without the gun, you will be the subject. So
yes.
That was very heavy. So, yeah, I saw Adams. They had a biography on Adams was great, too. So, yeah, History Channel's put out. It's pretty good. I mean, some of the actors look a little phony, but what is to be expected. But, Michael, let's just see what happens with this Corey Feldman deal. I think it's going to be very intriguing when this comes out because I think it's going to – it might shock the core of the nation. I think it could really have the potential to, wake up people. And by the way, this Ocasio-Cortez in New York, she's got 13 people running against her now. Do you know that?
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, everybody's coming out of the woodwork and run against her because this broad, the Looney Tune, he's a Looney Tune. And that Talib Nasheed and the other Omar, I think they should be deported, go back to their home countries. If they hit the United States so much and white males, leave. We don't need you here. For what? Insult us and to down and degrade us and downtrodden us? No, get out of here. We don't need this nonsense. Matter of fact, we need to have a 10-year moratorium on all immigration. For 10 years, we shouldn't let nobody in this country until everybody's vetted and they all start speaking the proper language English, like Teddy Roosevelt said. You know, there's a great thing about Teddy Roosevelt, Michael. I'll let you go on this note. It's race, riots, and immigration, Teddy Roosevelt. Have you ever heard about that?
Yes.
That was very intriguing reading that article about that. Very intriguing. Teddy Roosevelt was way ahead of his time in a lot of ways. That's for sure.
Yes, he
and
was.
Well,
he was the most out-of-the-box president we ever had.
Definitely. One American News talks about him all the time. They sure do. I will say this about Trump, Michael, and I'll let you go. 60,000 people now have all they tried to get into the country in the last few months. So I think Trump's immigration is working somewhat. It's not the hundreds of thousands that we're trying to hoard to the border and invade the country through a breakthrough. So I guess some things are working out as far as that goes. But I want to see these people get arrested, Michael. I really do. I can't wait to one day I can call your show. We can say, man, there's like 200-300 people, mayors, governors, all being arrested. That would be a spectacular day for this country.
I would love to see that too. I would definitely love to see that too. All right. Well, listen, we're going to let you go here. All right. Thank you. And the name I was trying to remember was Fatty Arbuckle, who in 1921 violently raped this actress, Virginia Rapp, so badly that she died of peritonitis a few days later. And even though he was acquitted of the murder, it ended his career. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here to Jim in Brooklyn. And Jim, I'm going to have to take you through the next commercial break. What's on your mind?
Okay, regarding the 10 ICE people coming into the 10 cities, I spoke with my Attorney General, Letitia James from New York, and I told her what I told many other government officials, that back in the 1950s, remember Oracle Forbes, who didn't want school integration in Arkansas and Little Rock, he stood in the schoolhouse door to prevent it, and President Eisenhower sent in the federal troops because the federal law trumped the Arkansas state law, and they moved him out of the way, and the schools were integrated. And I told her also, and other officials, that same thing here. We have the federal law, and that we should send in people and just go into these courthouses where the criminal aliens are hiding behind the local government and just pull them out. Pull the other people out of the way.
Well, under the Supremacy Clause, federal law takes precedent. Jim, stay on the line. We're going to come right back to you after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Jim in Brooklyn. Jim, can you kind of pick up where you left off?
Well, I didn't have too much more to say about that, except a very good hint to people who want to speak to their representatives or other government officials, local or state, and have their message get through better rather than going through an assistant, because the assistants, they don't record it. They often just take notes, and who knows what they're going to do with it. What I do is I call the congressional switchboard between after 8 o'clock, before the representatives and their staff come in at 9 o'clock, and I leave a voicemail. That way, the whole thing gets down on recording. That's regarding to any issue. Now, I just want to change it for one other subject regarding this virus in China. Some people may call it divine justice, or some may call it karma. But isn't it interesting that the same government, which was closing in the Turkish Islamic Uyghurs in Xinjiang, now have their whole country going under quarantine? It seems like divine justice in a way.
Well, I don't know about divine justice, but if in fact that research paper is correct and we're looking at an R0 of between 4.7 and 6, that's highly contagious. And especially if the incubation period is a lot longer than 14 days, nobody knows where this thing has gone yet. And the problem is that people are walking around with this virus. They're able to infect other people, yet they're not symptomatic, so they don't know they've got it yet.
Right. And I want to say we had something on a smaller scale similar to that with the you heard of the Block Island and the deer tick disease, Lyme disease?
I remember that. Yeah.
Well, it still goes around, and Block Island is right off of the end of Long Island, between Long Island and Connecticut, and that's where all these medical experiments are being and pathogens are being developed. And this Lyme disease, it took place in Connecticut, right off that island. That's where it started out. That's where the heaviest concentration of it is. And so, it's...
We linked an article about biological warfare in the United States to whatreallyhappened.com. And you'd be surprised how many facilities the U.S. government has and what they've been doing with these pathogens they're coming up with. So you might want to hunt that one down on what really happened. In fact, on the next commercial break, I'll try and bump it up to the top.
Okay, thanks a lot. Good to have you back over here also.
All right, well, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Now, getting on back to the COVID-19 virus here, apparently there's a research paper released by biologists Botao Xiao and Lei Xiao points to a bloody incident at the Wuhan Center for Disease Control Library. This is the BSL-4 lab we've been talking about, and it's less than 1 mile from the supposed disease epicenter at Wuhan Fish Market. And apparently, a researcher was once attacked by bats that were known to be infected with COVID-19. We got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And I'm still trying to find that article that we put up. There is so much going on and so many member stories that the first page is not all of it. So you have to go down to pages 2 and 3. But that article is in there, and I'm going to keep on trying to relocate that and bump it to the top, because it's basically this expose, if you will, of America's research into biological weapons and the number of times we have actually used those, not just on foreign countries, but even on our own people. Okay, we're going to take another phone call here from Alan in Illinois. Aloha, Alan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Okay, thank you, sir. I would like to explain something that I'm learning about the Catholic Church. And basically, the title would be something like The Catholic Church Gets Its Just Desserts. Now, let me go into some detail. Here in Chicago, where I live, the Catholic Church is closing down churches and consolidating them, and they're also closing schools for the same reason. They just don't have enough Catholics to fill the seats. So they're losing parishioners and they're losing students. Now, I would like to explain, if you think about the Catholic situation, they have a huge bureaucracy of high schools and colleges, universities, and if they felt that there was a shortage of parishioners, they could have made it possible for their college-age students to get married and start their families, and then they would have devout Catholics. They'd be baptizing Catholics, second and third generation, and they'd be filling their pews. But what the Catholic Church did, they've always come down on their students, and they've told their students, you're forbidden to have children, you're forbidden to get married. And instead, the Catholics brought foreigners here from third world countries that they thought were going to be the next generation, the replacement generation of devout Catholics. But the fact is, when people come here from third world countries, they sit down for a couple of seconds with Catholicism, but as soon as they get their EBT card and they're signed up for Medicaid, then they're out on the streets. And if they go to church at all, they're going to set up their own churches with the ministers from their own races and religion. So what I'm saying to the Catholic Church is, you're getting what you deserve, because it's very, in my mind, the people who should be first in line to have babies is men and women in college and not prostitutes. Now, let me expand on this just a bit. I am familiar at this time with 3 separate and distinct instances where women have murdered their children. The children are grammar school age. On 2 occasions, It's been a boy, and on 1 occasion, it's been a girl. And when these 3 murdering women went to prison, the first thing that happened to them is they delivered babies. Now, I'm wondering, how could abortion not be automatic? And how could sterilization not be automatic for women who kill children, and then we're going to tell kids in college, oh no, you've got your final exams to take. So that's basically my comment. Do you want to, is there anything you want to add or you want to correct?
Well, nothing that I want to correct. I don't know that the Catholic Church is really telling their domestic indigenous parishioners not to have children. They simply want more Catholics to sit in those pews and throw money into those collection plates. And right now they're running out of money. That's the main reason that they're shutting churches and consolidating congregations, is because they're having to pay out so much money for all the child molestation cases.
Well, yes. I don't want to talk about child molestation because I don't believe in it, but I get the UN's review, and I noticed at the UN's review, an African guy was crowing that Africans in England are starting to get higher IQ scores than white people in England. But you see, that's the reason. The reason is that we are making it impossible for intelligent people to get married and start their families. So, like I said, the child molesting issues, I don't want to take a position, and I don't want to argue with anyone for or against. But my overall view is, my overarching position is, I'm very dissatisfied that kids in college can't start their families. I'm very unhappy with this situation, and I wish there was something I could do to change it. So, okay, thank you for letting me speak, Mr. Rivero. I'm going to hang up now, and you can get going with the rest of your show. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much here, and we're going to switch over to Robert in London. Aloha, Robert. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Michael. You're well, I hope.
Yes.
Have you heard of Laura Loomer? Because
yes.
I never have until I never heard of her until a day or two ago. I got a message on my phone from Gab saying Laura Loomer, the most excluded social media person, excluded from social media, the world's most excluded person. I thought that's really strange. And I looked on my computer for the Wikipedia and found Laura Loomer's Wikipedia page. And she looks just a sort of typical Cher lookalike person. And I sort of read something, but I couldn't understand why she's the most excluded person in social media. And as soon as I saw her face, I knew that there was a put-up job somewhere, not a false flag, but a false narrative, because being excluded on social media is one of those things that are sort of going around a lot, and I think that there's some kind of false narrative that's going to be developed somehow. Yeah? That's my point. So keep an eye out for Laura Loomer, I think. How her, if you look on her Wikipedia page, she's got sort of antics. She's been playing up a lot, and I think there's some kind of develop a false narrative. They're going to use it as an example somehow. Just keep an eye out. That's all I'm saying. Okay.
Okay. All right. We'll keep an eye out.
That's my message. Thanks very much for everything you've done so far.
All right. Well, thank you for the phone call. We're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who've just rejoined the network. Getting on back to the COVID-19 virus, apparently, according to Los Angeles National Laboratory, COVID-19 is highly contagious and more infectious than initially estimated. This is a confirmation on the other story that we did where they've revised the R0 upward. Now, for those who don't know what it is, the R0 number is the average number of people that will be infected by a patient. So if somebody has an illness and they infect one other person, the R0 is 1. If they have an illness and they infect an average of 3 other people, the R0 would be 3. An R0 of 6, that is a serious, serious problem. So again, that other research paper said between 4.7 and 6.0 is the new estimated R0 for COVID-19. Now, apparently, one of the weird things about this COVID-19 virus is that when you get it, you don't evolve a natural immunity to it. which is very, very unusual. And apparently people can be reinfected by COVID-19, and it's often more lethal the second time around. People are dying of heart attacks. Meanwhile, regardless of how real or fantasy COVID-19 is, people are still responding as if it is a serious matter. And apparently COVID-19's effect on global energy markets has been a disaster. OPEC slashed its oil demand forecast last week. Goldman Sachs doubled down on its bearish oil take and has cut its oil price target by $10 to $53 for the year as a result of a demand shock that is set to collapse Chinese oil consumption by 20% or as much as 4 million barrels per day. This is because factories are shutting down. People are basically staying home. They're not going into their offices. And the sharp decline in demand in China, which, by the way, is the world's largest oil importer, is now stranding oil cargoes off the country's coast and across Asia. Tankers are just sitting there. They don't know what to do or where to go. I remember when we still lived in Hawaii, looking out over the Pacific and seeing all kinds of tankers and cargo ships just parked there. As the Baltic Dry Index was slowing down, oil demand was slowing down. Of course, if you're going to be parked someplace, Hawaii is a really good place to do it, at least from the point of view of the crew that's on shore leave. Now, interestingly enough, China is the world's largest importer of lobster. But because people don't want to go to the supermarket to get them or to the restaurants to eat them, demand has plummeted to the point where lobster companies are starting to throw live lobsters back into the ocean because there's not enough people to buy them these days. Okay, now let's turn to the international news here. North Macedonia is being used by NATO to target Serbia and Russia. The North Macedonian House of Representatives this week unanimously approved for their country to accept the NATO accession protocol, taking the former Yugoslav Republic a step closer towards accession into NATO, which is expected to be completed and finalized in the spring. This is only possible because of the Prespa agreement signed between Athens and Skopje in June of 2018, bringing an end to the name dispute between the two countries that emerged in 1991 with the breakup of Yugoslavia. Now, because of this game playing, we are seeing articles like this one that came out of Press TV saying NATO has turned obsolete and it should have been disbanded a long time ago. This is coming from a former U.S. Senate advisor and diplomat. And the proportion of people who have a favorable view of NATO dropped at least 10 percentage points in the US, France, and Germany between 2017 and 2019, showed a study released on Monday by the Pew Research Center. And I can understand why, because NATO was supposed to be about defense, and instead it's become an offensive force. All right, let's take another phone call here. Tom in Utah. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Can you hear me? Mike? Hello?
Yes, I'm here. My button didn't work the first time. How are you doing?
Oh, okay. Okay. Let's see, where are you located right now?
I'm in Santa Claus, Indiana.
Just wondered how far you were away from the Mississippi, the Missouri, and the Ohio.
Well, the Ohio just runs down south here, but we're out of the floodplain.
The reason I asked about that is because you're right in a foci of where the migrating birds come together. The birds that come out of Asia cross the Aleutian Island flyway. They slip down through Alaska and through almost west central Canada, come down the Missouri. And then the birds from upper Canada and the birds from South America, they go back and forth across and follow the Mississippi. The birds from Europe, they come across Greenland, Iceland, Nova Scotia down, and they follow the Ohio. They come together. They're just about mid-Missouri and Iowa.
Yeah.
And that's when all the birds get to exchange their viruses. So I was
well at this point. At this point, first of all, there are a lot of birds around here, and I put out bird seed because I like watching them. I'm not seeing any of the exotic birds from Europe or Asia. It's mostly the indigenous stuff, but there's no indication that COVID-19 can infect birds. It infects bats, and obviously it infects humans.
I'm sorry, but the fact is that the birds are primary vectors. Bats, birds, anything that flies moves that, and it doesn't mean the individual bird. For example, the bird there in China doesn't have to fly to America, but he flies to an area where another bird population that does, they kind of skip across. In fact, the 1918-1919 flu began right there where the three rivers come together. And that's why the flu went worldwide. Well, there was a couple of ways. It went worldwide through the birds, and the birds are the primary vectors for all disease. That is fact. But they were not only, that virus in 1918 was not only carried by the birds, but it was also carried by the products that were produced there. And Dr. Cohen in 1918 noticed the virus within the pigs and then in the people, the farmers. And when he started to speak out and said, caution people about taking that product and shipping it, they were upset because they were getting contracts from military and ended up at Fort Riley and then beyond. Then, of course, they shipped that product to Europe. That infected the soldiers over there, and the birds that were the scavengers of their bodies or their materials over there then carried it to the rest of Europe. So what I was going to say is put up a big sign that says no fly zone. Put it out there next year. By the way, I have reports from my friends there. I work in veterinary pathology, and my friends tell me there's been an unusual die-off of birds there around the convergence of those rivers, and it takes about 2 or 3 months from the Asian populations to contact the other and do that passing the baton, in a race to finally make it to Jackson County. So half a year usually gets everybody mixed together there, that foci. And then they go back and spread backwards and carry it backwards and also carry it into Europe. So watch what happens. About 6 months from now, you'll see it really flowering, potentially flowering around you. And then another 6 months, it'll be on the other side of the Atlantic, coming that way. I mean, there's birds that are going to be going from China westward, towards India and thereabouts, and over to Turkey, and then over to Europe. So if you watch the fly patterns of the birds, you can almost determine when an infection in one spot of the world is going to hit the other. Of course, the other thing that is kind of works in our favor sometimes, or most of the time, is that in that time, the virus is being worked upon by the background radiation and actually either made dormant or benign, or actually, in some cases, actually made worse. It depends on which way the DNA is being modified by the alpha, beta, gamma particles passing through them. But anyway, I was just going to say, if you don't want to catch the flu, or the coronavirus, which the flus are, don't have any contact with the birds or anything that the birds contact directly. By the way, these viruses cannot be sustained in the environment more than a few moments. It's like taking a baby and tying it down in the desert, naked, staked down, no nourishment, no protection, and they expire. And the same thing occurs with the bacteria that are actually the trucks or the vehicles for these viruses. Viruses cannot move on their own. They have to be carried, we call them phage, or phage viruses. Well, phaging, that means they got to ride in something else. And the thing that carries them is a bacteria that has a flagella and can move itself. But even a bacteria cannot move in the air. It has to have the fluids and tissues of an animal, both to nourish it and to sustain it, protect it from the environment. You put it out on a sidewalk in Los Angeles. I think I mentioned it to you the other day. About 4 to 10 seconds is about the lifespan of a virus that's truly naked to the environment. 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 10, 12 minutes, bacteria are pretty much history. So
okay, well, let me cut in here because we're almost to the commercial break here. First of all, viruses tend to be very species specific, and it's actually unusual for a virus to jump species. Now, as I said before, I've heard that, obviously COVID-19 is infecting humans, and it originated in bats. I haven't actually seen anything to indicate that it's in the bird population yet. Remember back in 2000?
You will not see it.
Okay, may I please speak? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The thing that was really unusual about the flu that everybody was supposed to be scared of back in 2009 was that it contained elements of bird, pig, and human viruses. And that is very, very unusual. I just saw some Canadian geese fly by. Are they carrying the COVID-19? Anyway, listen, we got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call, and we'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I did, in fact, find that article on biowarfare, and it is at the top or close to the top of the main page, so you can go and read that. It's probably going to open a lot of eyes. I think those of us who've been in the truth movement for a long time already know most of this, but for a lot of people, it's going to be an eye-opener as to what the U.S. government has been up to when you're not looking here. All righty, turning back to the international news here. Yemen's Houthis succeeded in shooting down a Saudi jet, a Tornado fighter jet, with an advanced surface-to-air missile. This happened last Friday, Valentine's Day. And the air defenses shot down the coalition warplane with an advanced surface-to-air missile supported by modern technology. The sky of Yemen is not for a walk, and the enemy must count 1,000 times for that. The Ansalara-affiliated Yemeni army spokesperson, Brigadier General Yahya Sarra'a said on Friday evening. Well, in response, Saudi Arabia has launched another civilian massacre in Yemen. They struck and basically killed dozens of civilians in response to the apparent downing of one of their jets. Turning over to Syria, the United States says they're feeling challenged by Russia in the northeast. The 500 U.S. ground troops that remain in Syria, according to Trump, purely to control the oil, are finding themselves less and less welcome in Syria's northeast. Well, I would say so because Syria's government wants to control that oil. And they want the U.S. to go home. Officials are presenting Russia as presenting them a constant set of challenges to stay. Well, you're not supposed to be there here. Okay, the Battle of Aleppo city ends in Syrian army victory after 7+ years of fighting. They've officially captured the last remaining areas under jihadist control in Aleppo and its surrounding area, ending a nearly 8-year-long battle. And according to a field source in Aleppo, the Syrian army's victory came this afternoon following the capture of the Leyramun and Kafr Hamra sectors, which were under the control of the jihadists for most of the war. Well, good for them here. Apparently, Russian bombers destroyed Turkish tanks, 18 MLRS installations, and about 50 armored personnel carriers. This came out of the Bulgarian military.com citing news agency Aviapro publication. So things are really heating up, and I wonder what Erdogan is going to do about this. Down in Iran, Rouhani is saying that Iran will only negotiate with the U.S. if Washington returns to the P5+1 nuclear deal and scraps all of the harsh economic sanctions against Tehran. And said, we will never negotiate under pressure, we will never yield to America's pressure, and we will not negotiate from a position of weakness. America's maximum pressure towards Iran is doomed to failure. This from Rouhani. All right, we're going to take ourselves another phone call. Jim in Michigan, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. Maybe I can clear up a few things. Well, I don't know. Again, there's a lot of issues as far as the Spanish flu is what they called it back in the 1918s. Okay.
Yes.
But what people don't know is that I don't know. Maybe you do know. At that particular time, before we got into World War I, that we had Woodrow Wilson, for the first time in history, made it mandatory for the troops to be vaccinated.
Yes.
And what they were vaccinated for back then was typhoid vaccine is what they came up with. Okay, but the typhoid vaccine was actually made in Roundup pig. Okay.
Yes.
And then I think it went from that to eggs for the final production of that wonderful concoction that they did. But I think the whole point is that all the cases back then, what happened was when they were making this typhoid vaccine, it mutated.
Yes.
And they mixed it with the pig, and they mixed it with the eggs and what have you. So all of it wasn't. I'm sorry, sir, but I don't think it was the birds that just spread that around. It could have been maybe once it got into the human population, but the Spanish flu is because it happened in Spain, but it was on military bases, and it went from there to kill. I think they said it was maybe 10% of the world population.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
And then, we go also to back in the 1900s. And are you familiar with Dr. Russell Blaylock, neurosurgeon?
The name sounds familiar, but not really.
Okay, yeah, he's a brilliant guy. Anyways, listen to a lot of his lectures and what have you, but he's looking back also. He looked at the history of polio in this country, and he said,
okay, Jim, can I put you on hold? I'm going to put you on hold. Don't hang up. We're going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Jim in Michigan. And Jim, you were going to tell us about Dr. Blaylock.
Yes, Dr. Blaylock has done a lot of research. He's a world-renowned neurologist, okay? But anyway, I guess the point comes when you talk about even the polio vaccine. What happened was they did a couple of vaccines. Back in 1914, it was pertussis. Diphtheria came in 1926 and tetanus in 1938. But anyways, what Dr. Blaylock is saying is the fact that the diphtheria vaccine that they gave people back then, when these people contracted, and they looked at polio as, they call it the summer flu. There's different times in history where it was a little more dangerous than not, but most of the time back in our country's history, it was called the summer flu. There were a very small percentage of people that would get paralyzed and what have you, but that would be gone in about a year for the worst cases. So, but what had happened though is that when he has stated, and the information that's out there from the state health organizations, is that the diphtheria vaccine, once a person contracted polio, mutated with diphtheria and polio and caused very bad polio. Okay, and if you look at the public records going to Chicago and all over the country, most of the people that actually got paralytic polio were people who got the diphtheria vaccine. The people who got the polio and it didn't harm them were the kids who lived in the areas where there wasn't good hygiene or anything, but they had a lot of dirt and they had a lot of stuff that their body had it made it immune to. So, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that most of the things we see are caused by men trying to play God, and what they do is they just screw everything up. And now we look at the World Health Organization, and we find out that most of the polio, because we had said that the Albert Sabin, which was the attenuated polio vaccine, was not allowed anymore to be sold or used in the United States. We look at things like what they call the Cutter incident back when polio was going rampant around the country. And the Cutter incident, they infected, this is a vaccine manufacturer out in California, where they actually gave 68,000 people polio and their families and everything. And back there at the time when they say, well, the vaccine was just the most amazing thing to stop polio, but you have states like Idaho and it was Idaho and Omaha. Anyways, there was two states that actually had to stop vaccinating people with the polio vaccine because it was causing more paralysis than prior to the vaccine. So again, what happened was, if you look at the statistics from all the states for the polio vaccine, most of the states stopped using the vaccine because it caused more cases of crippling, debilitating polio than prior to the vaccine. And then we look at now, Michael, as all the cases of polio in the world, but this is like polio that has become stronger, mutated, but it's all done in all the countries around the world where, was it Bill Gates and everybody is saving them with the polio vaccine, but it's actually causing more polio, mutated polio, than ever had before. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the government and their laboratories and what have you, they have created all the sickness in the world going back from in the 1918s to pertussis to diphtheria. Everything they produce in the vaccine industry actually kills you or makes your immune system weak. So,
do you remember back during the Ford administration when they came out with mandating the swine flu vaccine, and the vaccine killed 50 times as many people as the flu did?
1976, absolutely.
Yeah.
There was a. That's when that, and I think what was the name of that news organization that actually went to the CDC, the head of the CDC and whatever, and said, and they even had Mary Tyler Moore, because the president at that time came out and said, well, I had the vaccine, and they said, well, Mary Tyler Moore had it, and when it all came out, it was all a lie. And there was only one guy that died from it, was a soldier, and but he was already compromised physically, so it was just a big program to get everybody in the United States. But yeah, Guillain-Barré's, this is why Merck Pharmaceuticals are getting their ass sued off, and they went to the government and said, we need, protection against lawsuits. This is where we got into I think it was 1986, I think it was, that they passed the Vaccine Protection Agency or whatever it was. But anyways, we've got the vaccine in court now. We've got no liability on the vaccine companies, pharmaceutical companies. So it all came from that.
Yes.
Just horrible. That did so much damage to people around the United States, and it was just all in vain. There was no critical pandemic happening. It was just all hyped by the vaccine companies, the CDC, and so anyways, we come up with what? Damaged people that are crippled, Guillain-Barré's, and God knows how many people. I think there was 300 or 400 people that died from the vaccine. So, but anyways, I guess we forget, but you know what? When the pharmaceutical companies can just dictate everything over the airways, whether it be radio, TV, well, not your radio station, but TV and everything, all you see is pharmaceuticals. When the guy in the pharmaceutical companies came out and said, why don't we just advertise on TV? It was the most brilliant thing they could have ever done, because then the TV and the radio stations and everybody said, oh my God, this is our source of income now, because everything else is gone out of the country. So the pharmaceuticals run the airways. Everything you see on TV, they run, and nobody will actually produce actual factual stuff. And now they're even banning on social media. They're banning any anti-vaccine. I'm anti-vaccine, but I'm pro good vaccines. But there's none out there right now. So anyways, they own the media. And I feel so sorry for parents because my children have never been vaccinated. They're just as healthy as can be. My son and daughter never saw a doctor in their whole life, medical doctor. Oh my God. How did that happen? Well, they weren't sick. So anyways, when I talk to people though, but, it's just so sad because my wife works she worked at the elementary school here, little 5-year-old kids and stuff, and there's so many damaged children from vaccines now. It breaks your heart.
Yeah, it does.
There's not much you can say to the parents. I try and give them as little information because I don't overload them, but it's just sad the fact that the pharmaceuticals now own all the media, and they really do scare everybody because when I talk to parents about this kind of stuff, they're going, what if my child was to die of measles? I grew up, I'm 62 years old, and I grew up in the 60s, and, the bodies, we all got the measles, we all got the mumps, we got everything, chicken pox, whatever it is, and the bodies weren't lined up or stacked like cordwood outside. The only thing we got from all that information and all that sickness was lifelong immunity, which they don't get from the vaccines now. They're only good for 2 or 3 years, and you got to redo them again. So, anyways, I'm kind of rattling on, Michael, but thanks for letting me get this out. I appreciate it, my friend.
You've got it, and thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to James in Vancouver. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, thanks for taking the call, Mrs. Francis. I'm in Missouri. I dropped. Anyway, your previous caller, as you all are talking about vaccines, I'd like to let you know that in 1969, I had a rare opportunity, and I read the handwritten notes of Jonas Salk.
Yes.
And that was at Vanderbilt University. And in that, Jonas Salk admitted in his notes that he had live polio, dead polio, mutated polio, and 212 monkey viruses in the vaccine. People were around in the 50s. I'm not sure about it afterwards, after the 50s. But you would find that every vial of vaccine had a separate or distinct number, so that when they gave the vaccine to somebody, they knew what they were actually giving the people. This was pure planned massacres of people. And I take great umbrage with your previous caller. It says, it didn't hurt people too much. Not too many people died of it. Well, in 1953, my mother was paralyzed from the waist down, spent 6 weeks in an iron lung, and a nurse fell asleep at night and didn't put a tube down her and to drain her lungs. My dad was paralyzed from the waist down. I got it as a real bad flu when I was 3. I then got it again when I was 8. I then got it again when I was 11, because the rotten, no-good doctors, and I'd love to use the proper language, they forced me to have the Kool-Aid, cherry stuff, every 6 months. And I've been written up in the medical journals, been in TV, newspapers, when the second time that I got it when I was 8, as, hey, only about 5% of the people in the world have ever had polio. Twice. Well, no one's had it 3 times. And, it really incites me of the ignorance of people that go out there and take these vaccines. And, it's very damaging to have to go through with your family what I've had to go through. And I'm about the last human being in the United States that is still alive from polio. Because what happens to people when they have polio is anywhere from 8 to 20 years later, they come down with something called post-polio syndrome. That hit me in 1984. And let me tell you what, folks, if you want to know what real pain is, get get that post-polio syndrome. All kinds of people in this country had recovered, got better, and then in a certain time frame, they were back to totally paralyzed in bed. Now, in Missouri, at one time, it had the largest self-help group for polio victims in the United States. So, if you want your family to go through what my family went through, go ahead and take the vaccine. And with this outbreak of the vaccines that are going on right now, they're not wanting they're wanting to scare everybody. But what they're not getting across to anybody through any of the media is they're setting everybody up to accept being quarantined. And by the way, 4 days ago, they had a World Health Organization guy, and he was talking, and this is on TV, and he said, well, we've got to get ready for next year. It's going to be worse next year. This is not a joke. They are trying to insult or to instigate all types of new wars, economic, political, bloodletting. This is not a joke. And there are plenty of ways to stop this virus. Gold, silver, and copper. That's another subject. But I take great umbrage with the man that says, it didn't do much damage to many people. You know, you can
I
just
can understand
read my
why.
tone about the ignorance of somebody that wasn't there, didn't do it, and that's what happens. People, oh, well, I was born in 1962. Well, great. You're a young person to me, and you haven't gone through it. When you go through it, and I wish I had a way to show a picture of my mother when she was still alive and in that iron lung. And my mom was a little bit different. She had a 100% recall. When she graduated law school, she had to wait, and she passed her bar exam. She had to wait 6 months to turn 21 to become an attorney. So it's really a real bummer to lose a woman like that because of these Canaanite, satanic people in the pharmaceutical industry. And if you don't understand, they are creatures of Satan. Satan is their father. Do your homework, folks. Thank you very much. And I sure hope that some of your people listen. Don't use the blood in any fashion. That's how they kill you. And I wouldn't wish 1/100th of the physical pain that I've gone through in my life on anybody, even a satanic man. Thank you for your show. I really appreciate you getting into this and allowing people to express actual knowledge. And I would also like to ask, how many people have read the handwritten notes of Jonas Salk? And how did I manage to do that when I was 19 years old? That's another story. But thank you very much for allowing me to vent a little bit. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, and that was Francis in Missouri. We had a small mistake on our little communications here. And apparently Jim has called back because he says that Francis didn't hear him correctly. So Jim, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Michael. Now, what I said was prior to when the polio actually migrated, and it was before, the diphtheria vaccine and polio from maybe the late 1800s until the time when it got, I would call it militarized. It was called the summer flu. I was not saying that when it actually mutated into polio, that was real, okay? And Jonas Salk in 1973 said, all polio is now caused by the vaccine. So my friend, I'm sorry you took it that way, but it was a summer flu until it it merged with diphtheria and tetanus vaccine and became.
Hey, Jim, we got to go. I'm sorry. I was hoping you could finish before the commercial break. So we'll be back after these few words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the international news now. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, back on the 14th of September, there was an attack on Saudi oil facilities, which the U.S. blamed on Iran. But there's no evidence to support it. Now the United Nations has come on out with another report saying, yes, indeed, Iran was behind it all. Iran has come on out and said, show us the evidence. What proof do you have that we had anything to do with this at all? And of course, I'm sure what the U.S. is going to say is, we don't need any evidence. We have divine knowledge. We have psychics. By the way, here's a joke for all the psychics out there. Okay, all right, getting on back to the news here. Apparently, Iran just had legislative elections, and according to their constitution, there are 5, let's see. Okay, Tom in Utah says the true name of polio in the labs is called bovine poli. I'm not sure, it's P-O-L-I-I. Seem to have touched a real nerve here between polio and the vaccines here. All right, so we're getting on back here. 5 reserved seats in the legislature for Iran's religious minorities. That's Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, Armenians, and Assyrians. And they take part in the elections as it's a national duty. Okay, at least 4 rockets hit the U.S. military coalition base in Baghdad. No casualties have been reported. This happened yesterday. And Washington, again, is blaming Iran-backed paramilitary groups for increasingly regular rocketing and shelling of bases hosting U.S. forces in Iraq. Did you ever stop to think that if it wasn't a false flag, maybe it's the Iraqi people? They want the United States to leave. Okay, the Hezbollah leader, Sayyad Hussein Nasrallah, gave a televised speech broadcast live from the Lebanese capital city of Beirut, saying that Trump's so-called deal of the century is meant to liquidate the Palestinian cause. Yes, that's exactly what it's meant to do. Exactly what it's meant to do. Now, according to the deal of the century, Palestine will stop all terror attacks on Israel, except obviously they can't stop the false flag ones. And Israel promises they won't expand the illegal settlements in the West Bank, although they're already hemming and hawing about that one. And in exchange, there'll be discussions about a Palestinian state some years down the road. That's basically it. Meanwhile, Netanyahu is actually out there boasting how Israel has succeeded in destroying the First Amendment and free speech in this country with all of these laws that criminalize criticism of Israel. He's attacking one of the most fundamental rights of the American people. Right to criticize government, any government, our government, Israel's government, France's government, Italy's government. We have a right to criticize all of them. All right, we're going to take another break for station identification, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3, getting on back to the international news. Pardon me. Over in Munich, they're having the security conference, which is more about waging war than security. And apparently there are a lot of protesters out there who are protesting the security conference, and it's resulted in scuffles between the police and protesters. And apparently there's been this overnight standoff. Some of them aggressively pushed the officers away, others held firecrackers and waved flags. During this conference, the German president refutes Trump's America's First policy. And this was his opening speech at the 56th Munich Security Conference. This happened last Friday. German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier slammed U.S. President Donald Trump's America First foreign policy approach, arguing that the U.S. now puts its own interests first at the expense of its closest allies. This speech was in the presence of U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, Speaker of the House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi, Senator Lindsey Graham, and Representative Adam Schiff. Apparently, he just really tore into them. Well, I think to a reasonable extent, it is appropriate for the United States government to put the interests of the United States first and foremost, but there is room for deal making and possibly going for a win-win situation. Unfortunately, our government, in terms of its foreign policy, has become extremely arrogant and demanding here. Now, the United States is claiming latest sanctions have finally thwarted the Russian-Germany Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. And apparently this was after U.S. sanctions in December took direct aim at the European and international companies and their executives assembling the 760-mile-long project that would allow Russia to export natural gas directly to Germany without having to go through Ukraine. And Bloomberg reports the White House top energy official said he's confident Russia won't be able to complete the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline in the Baltic Sea, and signaled the U.S. will press forward with its opposition to the project. What the U.S. is trying to do is maintain a monopoly on the distribution of oil and, of course, a monopoly on the global currency. It's failing miserably on the currency, I might add. And I'm going to take a wild guess here that in the long run, the Nord Stream 2 will be completed. Japan unexpectedly reports a terrible gross domestic product as it slides into recession. And looking at the latest GDP print out of Japan, one would think the country's economy was already being ravaged by the COVID-19 virus. 1.6 quarter to quarter and a whopping minus 6.3% annualized, nearly double the 3.8% estimated drop. This was the second worst GDP print since the financial crisis and the second worst quarter of the Shinzo Abe era, my rented lips, surpassing even the drop in the aftermath of Fukushima. Okay, over at the Federal Reserve, Powell is saying that quantitative easing 4 will be able to handle the coming economic crisis. I sure hope he's right. Again, there's a lot of people who want an economic crisis before the November election. So there's a lot of machination going on here. Getting on to immigration and refugees, apparently over in Sweden, which has, among other things, become the rape capital of Europe, robberies against children and young people are becoming more common and more serious. Many victims dare not report the crimes because they're afraid of retaliation. But apparently it's become a standard pattern where these foreigners, these immigrants, these refugees will rob Swedish kids, then knock them on the ground and pee on them. Yes, they're marking their turf or something. Okay, I'm going to go in here with a little bit of a personal gripe here, and it's regarding eBay, which apparently has had a problem with their automatic bidding system. And I just got an email back saying it did affect quite a few purchases, but eBay insists the problem has been fixed. And what it was, I was bidding on a telescope, an astronomical telescope, and I had a maximum bid of X. And the telescope was sold to another individual for price Y that was below my maximum bid. Now, eBay is sorting it all out, and I'm finally going to get the telescope. Yay, yay, yay on there. But if you've got something on automatic bidding right now, you might want to double check and make sure that that is going through correctly. Okay, this one caught me by surprise. I absolutely was not aware of this, but apparently radioactive waste from oil and gas wells are being used to de-ice the streets in 13 states. Ohio is getting ready to pass legislation to outlaw the practice. But basically, in these 13 states, radioactive waste is being spread on our roads. And apparently, there is no one federal agency that specifically regulates the radioactivity brought to the surface by oil and gas development, thanks to a single exemption the industry received from the EPA in 1980. Streams of waste generated at oil and gas wells, all of which are radioactive and hazardous to humans, are not required to be handled as hazardous waste. Boy, oh boy, somebody had to really pay a lot of money to their lobbyists to get that one here. Anyway, let's see. Over in Africa, they're having something that looks like right out of the book of Exodus. Locust armies are devouring entire farms in Kenya in as little as 30 seconds. Boy, I'm starting to think those people who think the end of the world is coming may be onto something. Between hurricanes and earthquakes and locusts, bad vaccines. Now, here's a little bit of, how should I put this? Hopeful news. And apparently, this is relating to Julian Assange. Andrew Wilkie, who's a member of parliament from Australia, is making the 10,000-mile trip to Belmarsh Maximum Security Prison in southeast London. He's going to be the first Australian parliamentarian to visit Julian Assange since he was detained last April. It may be that the government of Australia is going to exert some influence on behalf of their citizen. Julian Assange is a citizen of Australia, and it's been kind of obvious that through all of his troubles and travails that the government of Australia is finally going to try and do something about it. They haven't up until now. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network in this third hour here. A little bit of good news. I mentioned this in hour number one. Governor Northam's assault weapons ban in Virginia goes down in flames after moderate Democrats defect. And this was his prized assault weapons ban, and it got shot down. 4 moderate Democrats balked at the proposal. Take a guess that these 4 Democrats are facing a stiff election. And as that caller said into the show, the Virginians, they love their guns. Same here in Indiana. I'm going to be getting a gun permit myself. So, anyway. There's been another abuse of the red flag law execution. Apparently, a veteran had all of his guns seized over a mistaken identification. I hope he's going to get them back. All right, let's talk a little bit about computers and things like that there. Apparently, there is a problem with the new Samsung Galaxy Z flip phone. It reveals the glass screen scratches as easily as plastic and can be permanently marked by a fingernail. That is bad product design. Now, of course, the trick is they're trying to make these phones foldable. So it'll go into a pocket or a small pouch, then you take it out and you unfold it and you have a large screen, which sounds like a really good idea. But apparently Samsung has not implemented the idea in what would be called a consumer-friendly manner. And basically one reviewer posted a video on YouTube where he says the phone does not have a glass screen as advertised. And let's see, YouTuber Jerry Rig Everything, who performed durability tests on newly released phones, found the surface became scratched from a fingernail. He also called into question the legibility of Samsung's glass screen claims. I think that meant legitimacy. Okay, over at Microsoft, they've had yet another update fail. And it just seems like Windows 10 has been a disaster. It's a bigger disaster than Windows Vista or Millennium Edition. And apparently the latest update is deleting files on some people's PCs. Now, I'm aware of this because in order to be fair to Microsoft, I took one of Claire's laptops, Claire's Choir laptops that we were not using anymore, and I allowed it to do the automatic update to Windows 10, at which point it deleted all of the choral music files, not moved them to the trash bin where you could recover them. They were simply gone. And that little option to restore your previous operating system does not work. It doesn't go all the way back. So you have a machine that is part Windows 7, part Windows 10, and I wound up literally just throwing the machine in the trash. That's how badly it was messed up. So apparently this update was causing serious issues for Windows 10 users, with people's start menus and desktops reverting to their default states. But apparently the issue is more serious than thought, as it appears is deleting any files saved on the desktop as well. A lot of people save files on their desktops, or at least shortcuts. So some people have been able to restore their files. It appears the update is renaming and moving the user profile, but many people have found they're unable to restore the files that were deleted. While changing the user profile back to its default settings is annoying, if an update is faulty enough that it's actually deleting files, that is very serious. Now, I have one machine that's Windows 10. That's the machine that I use as a portable broadcast setup. And that's all I use it for. I'm not going to use it for anything else. Anyway. Okay. Tucker Carlson went on a rant exposing the unhinged and toxic liberal judge Amy Berman Jackson and mentions the biased juror. Why did it take so long? I mean, we know the jury foreman in the case was an anti-Trumper, had basically posted negative things about Roger Stone to social media. That juror should have been kicked off the jury pool by Stone's lawyers. I mean, before the trial actually starts and they're doing jury selection, each side gets so many opportunities to eject a juror. Maybe they just had so many anti-Trump, anti-Roger Stone people that Stone's lawyers simply ran out of their allotted number of rejections. But that was definitely, Judge Kangaroo, report to the courtroom. Judge Kangaroo, please report to the courtroom. Okay. China is saying that the CIA's hacker empire reportedly used a company's encryption devices to spy on over 120 countries. This is the continuation of that Crypto AG scandal. Now, Crypto AG is a company, private company, or was private, that made sort of a copy of the German Enigma machine. It's electronic now, but same basic principle. And in the book, The Puzzle Palace, I think it was James Bamford wrote that, he basically revealed that the NSA had gone to the owner of Crypto AG and paid him a considerable sum of money to backdoor the machines. Well, now it's come on out that the CIA simply bought the company and they're using these so-called secure encryption devices to spy on 120 countries. And again, go ahead and take a look at my article, Rivero Challenges the NSA, because in it, it's basically a primer on how to write your own secure encryption that cannot be broken by the NSA. The only way the NSA can gather information from you is if you use a standard encryption system where they already know the method, or they have backdoored everything like they did to this Crypto AG devices. Not to mention there was a backdoor in Clipper chip. There was a backdoor in DES. That's how they do it. They want you to believe your communications are private, but they aren't. They absolutely are not. Okay, you have probably at one point heard that an aspirin a day is going to make your heart a lot better. Well, now they're starting to think maybe it isn't such a good idea. For one thing, too much aspirin can cause a lot of damage to your stomach and your GI tract. So my understanding is from reading the literature that if you've never had a heart attack, taking the aspirin every day won't have any effect. It only seems to anecdotally have an effect after you've suffered one heart attack. People who go on the aspirin regimen seem to have fewer follow-up heart attacks, and they're not exactly sure why. But it makes it for great advertising copy. Go on out there and buy the stuff. Okay. Bernie Sanders has raised a few eyebrows. He's out there with a campaign ad touting himself as the first Jewish president, which I don't think is going to go over all that well with the American people any more than Buttigieg being gay. And just for the record, I don't have a problem with him being gay. You have a problem with some of his policies. But this idea about, oh, what are we going to do with the first husband? You call him the first husband. Problem solved. Really here. Okay, we already talked about Bloomberg calling farmers lacking in gray matter here. All righty. Apparently, the World Health Organization is holding secret talks with tech giants to stop the spread of coronavirus, quote, misinformation, end quote. Now, are they really going to give us the accurate dope on what's going on with COVID-19? I don't think so. We're already seeing indications that China is trying to keep a lid on how bad this is, and it would make sense that our government would do exactly the same in order to forestall a panic. So, and again, Tom Cotton reiterates his suggestion that COVID-19 originated at a super lab in Wuhan. All right, the biggest problem, of course, is that nobody truly knows anything about COVID-19. It's a big mystery. And I think at this point, one of the things that's going to play with people's heads is not knowing, but knowing that you can't trust what the government and the corporate media are telling you. Certainly, there are interests that want to fan up how scary this is to sell vaccines and other treatments. And then there are other people who are saying it's no big deal because they don't want to panic. And somewhere in between lies the truth. But looking at the economic damage that is already occurring because of this, a lot of people are taking this very, very, very seriously. So the Western mass media have discussed the new COVID-19 that began in the city of Wuhan in central China. Apparently last December is when it first appeared. But apart from repetitive small details and the inevitable China bashing, not much light has been shed on the circumstances. And looking at all the report from 100 Western Noon reports, ABC, CBS, CNN, AFP, and from some Chinese media, officially called the novel coronavirus or COVID-19, the contagion is a respiratory illness, a new type of viral pneumonia in the same family of infections as SARS and MERS. Now, the good news there is that SARS and MERS turned out to not be as bad as was originally stated. So we can still sort of cross our fingers and think that maybe COVID-19 isn't going to be that bad. But again, the not knowing is what's going to mess with people's head. And some people are going to say, I'm not going to worry about it. Like I said earlier, I'm not worried about the birds flying overhead because of what I know about how viruses are species specific and no peer-reviewed reports that birds have been infected with COVID-19. Then you've got the other side who are just going to say, I'm going to err on the side of caution. I'm buying, protective suits and masks and laying in the food and the water, which you ought to do the food and the water anyway for a wide variety of reasons. And again, have your emergency kit portable, which is something I'm sure those poor people down along the Pearl River wish they'd done. We're going to take another break for our commercials here. Phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we'll be back with a phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And a reminder that Republic Broadcasting is in the middle of a fundraising campaign right now. We need your help. Uncle Stadmiller wants you. And first of all, a heartfelt thanks to everybody who has donated, both to Republic Broadcasting and whatreallyhappened.com. It allows us to keep replacing equipment that's worn out. It allows us to feed and groom our control room technicians. And overall, it's a very, very good thing. We don't have the kind of money that's pouring into the corporate media, as you can tell from this amazing set I have here behind me. So we really do need your help. The postal address to donate to Republic Broadcasting is, grab your pencils, Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. Also, just a little note, eBay sorted out that mess, and I'm going to get my new telescope. It's going to be so much fun looking at the sky out here in Indiana. And we're going to go back to the phones to Laura in Michigan. Aloha, Laura. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Mike. I just wanted to let you know, you don't have to worry about a first husband. I'll tell you why. When you look at the law books, they cannot consummate a marriage. You can get married in front of 10 rabbis, priests, whatever you want to get married in front of. But unless you consummate the marriage, which cannot be done by two same-sex partners. You are not married. So take, for instance, a heterosexual couple. If they do not consummate, they can get annulment, which annulment means the marriage never took place. So two same-sex cannot be called a married couple.
Well, then they'll call him the first partner.
That would have to be first partner. That's right. But not first,
Okay.
Husband.
Okay, well, that problem is now solved. Anything else?
No, that's it. I just want people to get that straight and not keep using the words first husband or anything like that. So,
okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Here, we're going to go back and do a little bit more news. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Okay. Anyway, a little clarification on that comment that Bloomberg made, where he said anybody who's 95 years old and has cancer, don't bother treating them. They're going to die soon anyway. And he's justifying it, saying that healthcare in this country, healthcare for all, will bankrupt the nation unless we deny care to the elderly. Now, I don't know how old Bloomberg thinks elderly starts at, but that's bordering dangerously close on euthanasia and population control. Oh, they're too old to work. They're too old to make money off of, the ledger is running in the red. Let's just let him die off. Oh, what a piece of work he is. Even with Hillary as his VP, I don't think he's going to get elected. He's just annoying everybody between us elderly people, and yes, I consider myself that, and the farmers and the factory workers. He's just annoyed everybody today. Apparently, he is thinking he's got enough money to buy the presidency, and it doesn't matter what the voters think. I'm looking forward to November when he gets his comeuppance, if he even makes it to be the nominee, and I don't think he's going to. I don't think he's going to. He's spending a huge fortune just for the number 3 slot in the Democratic polls. I really do think it's going to be Bernie Sanders. So we'll see here. All righty. Interestingly enough, and this is coming out of government slaves, there is a new bill that will make it illegal for citizens to pump their own gas to keep you safe. And of course, it will also guarantee employment for gas station attendants. Now, I'm old enough to remember when you pulled into a service station, the attendants would run out and they'd pump your gas for you. That was convenient. You didn't have to get out of the car. You didn't have to breathe the fumes, which, by the way, are in fact carcinogenic. And it will create employment opportunities. So I think that's actually a good thing. Actually, it's a very, very good thing. Okay. Article here about how modern U.S. detention camps resemble internment camps. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. It's a big fence outside and some buildings for people to sleep in. Whether you call it detention or internment, it's really a matter of semantics, I think it was here. All righty. Apparently, new evidence links migraine headaches to a hyperexcitable visual brain. And I guess that must be me because unless I'm very careful about what I eat, I get migraines here. Scientists have found a way to extract information from a single grain of moon dust. That'll be very, very useful since there is such a rarity of those lunar samples that were returned by Apollo. In fact, a lot of them, big scandal for NASA, a lot of them have gone missing. So anyway. All righty, we're going to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And apparently scientists have discovered a new way to generate electricity from rain that can power 100 LED bulbs per drop. Now, that sounds like real science fiction. And I'm sure it's going to make the big electric companies a little bit nervous every time the rain is coming down like it's doing here right now. All righty, over in China, Xi Jinping is threatening more crackdowns. As scientists say, the coronavirus, the COVID-19, may have originated from the Wuhan labs. Remember that story we mentioned in hour number 1, where apparently they were working with bats that were infected with this COVID-19, and there was an accident where one of the researchers got attacked by a bat and got spattered with the blood, and he self-quarantined for 14 days. But if in fact the incubation period is longer than 14 days, then he would have walked out from the quarantine still infected, not symptomatic, able to spread the disease. That's what makes it, if in fact this is accurate information, that's what is making things look so dicey, is the fact that people are walking around who have COVID-19. They're not symptomatic. They don't know they have it, but they're able to infect others. Okay, we're going to take some phone calls now, starting with Don in Arizona. Aloha, Don. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Mike, yeah, YouTube continues to, anybody they don't like, they just kick them. They just do away with them. You know, this guy, I don't know if you're familiar with this guy, Nick Fuentes, America
Yes.
First with Nick Fuentes. He was a very young guy. He's only about 21 years old. He's smart. You know, he's not, he doesn't, obviously didn't have he doesn't know everything. He's only 21, but I mean, he's smart about some stuff, and just all of a sudden they kicked him. I watched him once in a while, and it says this account has been terminated due to multiple or severe violations of YouTube's policy prohibiting hate speech. That's what it says. I don't think didn't hate anybody. He was not really strong on Israel like some of these other people. He didn't make Israel a big deal, but he said, he said he didn't care about Israel, and why would he didn't really care about the Palestinians getting killed. But on the other hand, if we just let Israel kill the Palestinians, it's bad for America, because all these other countries then have resentment against America for. I mean, it's not good for our country. But that was not his main thing. So anyway, he's gone, and it's a bad thing. There's no free speech. These people that get kicked off of YouTube, they can't sue, they can't appeal, they can't do anything. All they can do is try to go to BitChute, I guess. Or they can get on RBN. RBN keeps on going, right? Republic Broadcasting Network.
Yep, we're still here.
Okay. Yeah, I guess you got kicked off of YouTube too, right? Pretty much.
Not so much. I mean, they play with our view numbers a lot. But if you look at our YouTube videos, especially Claire's music videos, they're not really offensive to liberals. It's just commentary stuff and a lot of Claire's Christian music.
But I mean, your show doesn't
Oh,
live
yeah,
stream anymore.
yeah, that's true. There's a big problem there. They won't carry my live show anymore, and we're working on either trying to sort out what's going on with YouTube, or we're going to find another provider.
RBN is all right. I mean, you can just listen. You can just listen live to your show on RBN. It's the same as just except you can't see you, but that's no big deal,
Yeah, that's no big deal. You all know what I look like. In fact,
right,
what I ought to do is just put up a photo of. What I'm going to do is put up a photo of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as my graphic during my broadcasts here, because it's like looking in a mirror. We're identical twins, really.
He was good in that movie, The Other Guys. Did you see that one, Mike? The Other Guys?
No, I didn't.
It's a slapstick comedy, really. But at the end of it, the plot, if there was a plot, it was about Wall Street and the crooked people on Wall Street. And then at the end of it, they flash all these statistics about how Goldman Sachs got bailed out by TARP, and they compared the salary at Goldman Sachs with the average salary in America. So I mean, it did kind of try to make the point that hey, Wall Street is a bunch of crooks, even though it was just a comedy. It was an action comedy. But
well, I'll tell you the one that really impressed me the most. If you've seen the Disney movie Moana, it's an animated film, very Polynesian theme. It's about the Voyagers, and one of the characters is the demigod Maui, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson did the voice for that, and he did an absolutely fabulous job.
Well, in this, he just a cameo role. He was a cameo role in this, because him and the other guy, I forget the name of that black guy that played in. Anyway, they were the super cops, and they decided to jump off skyscrapers aiming for the bushes, so they were dead then. It's just a goofy comedy. It was a goofy comedy, Mike. But the amazing thing about it is, at the end, they did take on Goldman Sachs and everything. So they're not. So that's the way it was. Okay, I'll let you go, Mike. Thanks a lot.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Kelly in Austin. Aloha, Kelly. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi there, Mike. You listen to Bernie Sanders, and he talks about making a lot of things free. And the one I hear a lot is he wants public universities to be tuition free. And I wonder whether people have really thought about what that means. If Congress were to declare universities tuition free, what does that mean for management of universities? Does that mean then that the federal government, through the Department of Education, would then step in and assume management of universities, dictate policy, admission policy, tuition policies to universities? If as badly run as universities are, I can't imagine as badly universities are. I can't imagine how worse it's going to be if Congress steps in with some idiotic idea like that.
Well, the more we see federal control over the educational system, the worse the educational system gets. These are the same people who approved Common Core.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a way to assert federal control over all aspects of higher education. Again, for as bad as miserable as the government does anything else, I just can't imagine that handing higher education over to the Department of Education is going to improve anything for anybody.
Is this going to include the private schools?
No, he only mentions public schools. I assume because there's they're state supported. However, the private schools receive a lot of federal funding, and so there would be, I think, an argument to be made that private schools should also be tuition free, to use Bernie's term. This is a real problem, and I think people who might be in favor of it right now might want to rethink this, because I think you're looking at serious problems long term for higher education. I'm not sure that states are willing to cede control of their universities to the federal government. I know damn well the state of Texas would more than likely tell Bernie and his friends to go take a hike if they think that's what's going to happen here. I'm sure other states would do the same. So while it might sound like a good idea right now to Bernie and his and his followers, I'm not sure it's going anywhere. But if they try to push it again, it's the kind of thing that could have, I think, disastrous effects on a higher education that's already in trouble.
I would tend to agree with you. Okay, let's see.
I'd be curious to hear what other people have to say about this, but I'd like to get some discussion of this going somewhere, and I'm curious whether anybody else has any ideas about this. Anyway, thanks for taking the call, Mike. I appreciate it.
All right, you've got it. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Okay, Don Stratton, who was one of 3 remaining crew from the USS Arizona from the attack, has passed away at age 97. He had a good long run. And apparently he escaped the Arizona by making a hand-over-hand climb across a rope to an adjacent ship on December 7th, 1941. He apparently passed away Saturday, leaving just 2 remaining living survivors of the attack on Pearl Harbor on the Arizona itself. Okay, Kellyanne Conway is back in the news here. She was doing an interview with Chris Wallace in an interview about Trump, Barr, and Bloomberg, and apparently she just really gave him a very, very hard time. Well, good. Chris Wallace needs to be having a hard time on things here. All right, we already talked about more Americans identify as Republicans than they do as Democrats. All right, we're starting to see more and more interest, if you will, in the economic sector regarding gold, saying gold definitely works. It's an inflation hedge and a dollar hedge in the era of heightened geopolitical risk. Well, a lot of people talk about investing in gold. Gold is not really an investment per se, although as the dollar declines, its price in dollars will go up. But it is a good means of preserving your wealth. And that is something that a lot of people need to be thinking about right now, is having that gold and silver on hand to preserve your wealth. I mean, at some point, we could see the dollar actually collapse. I mean, most of its value has already been inflated away. I mean, it's worth pennies compared to what the dollar was worth when the Federal Reserve was established. Absolutely will. Okay. Okay. Down in Lake Hollingsworth in Lakeland, Florida, they've had to shut down part of a park due to the annual snake orgy. That's where all the snakes come out and they wrap around each other and they reproduce. And apparently it's caused a little bit of a problem here. Okay, there's a man up in Michigan who was sentenced to up to 60 years in prison in 1996 for a marijuana dealing conviction, and he's hoping to cut his remaining time behind bars. Well, considering how many states have decriminalized marijuana, I think it would be appropriate. 60 years for dealing marijuana, that I think is excessive. And again, that makes it unconstitutional. There's an amendment in there that says excessive punishment will not be imposed. Talked about Windows 10 latest fail here. We talked about Virginia rejecting the assault weapons ban. Okay, Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov reaffirmed his country will continue its support to Syria in its war against terrorism until it is eradicated completely. The U.S. is definitely, it's like some circles in the United States government, they want a war with Russia. What a stupid thing. If we get into war with Russia or China or worse, both, whichever side feels they're losing the conventional war, they'll start turning those little keys in the silos. Anyway. Negative interest rates are fatal ultimately to your banking system. Of course, it has to be. They're paying you money to use their bank. Where's that all coming from? More bailouts? The Federal Reserve is printing money like crazy, and it's created a monster bubble it can no longer control. Over at West Point, there's a law professor who filed for federal whistleblower status to keep his job teaching at West Point Military Academy, has written a bombshell book about the systematic corruption, violence, fraud, and anti-intellectualism has been rampant at the historic institution for over 100 years. So if you're part of the military leadership or an alumnus of West Point, you may call him a traitor. But if you're anyone searching for reasons why the most powerful military in the world has not won a war in 75 years, you might call him a truth teller, and a pretty brave one at that. Yeah, if you come from West Point, oh, promote right to the top of the ranks. And if they're not really doing the job, if they're not teaching military strategy, if it's turned into another one of the so-called party schools that have crippled higher education, then yeah, that's a problem. And between our deteriorating military technology and what this gentleman is saying about how West Point, and he's saying it's true of all U.S. military academies, but mostly West Point, which is where he's teaching. And yeah, that's a problem. We can't win wars. They'll go to a stalemate or we'll lose them outright. Stalemate like in Korea, which is technically still on, or Vietnam, which we definitely lost. We're not doing well in Afghanistan. We're not doing well in Syria. We're not doing well in Iraq. This is a bad trend. And wise and prudent leadership would say it's time to knock it off. Fortunately, we do not have wise and prudent leadership in Washington, D.C. We have the war hawks like Lindsey Graham, like John McCain used to be. So, anyway. Apparently, a 14-year-old boy has been arrested, pardon me, in the stabbing death of Barnard College freshman Tessa Majors, 14 years old. What are we doing to our young people that they come out and think this is appropriate behavior? And some people are going to blame computer games, and some people are going to blame violent movies on TV, and others are going to blame the fact that these days in most homes with families, both parents are working. So the kids are not having any, shall we say, moral guidance when they're growing up that, no, it's not nice to stab people to death. All righty. Apparently, Bernie Sanders is solidifying his standing as the front runner of the Democratic primary after New Hampshire and a strong finish in the Iowa caucus. And apparently, young adults are supporting Bernie Sanders because they want to benefit from what is called the boomer socialism that older Americans already enjoy. In other words, they want Social Security to still be there. They want food stamps to still be there. They want Medicare to still be there when they, in fact, reach retirement age. Not that retirement is all that common anymore. A lot of people are finding they have to work until they die. That's a pretty sad state of affairs. And I know we keep hearing from the corporate media how great the economy is doing. We're hearing from Donald Trump how great the economy is doing. I don't believe them. When you look at all the homelessness and the hunger in this society and all the retail vacancies, not there. All right, we're going to take another break for commercials. We'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And over in Las Vegas, I guess the tightening of the economy has impacted them tremendously. Not as many people going to Vegas, not as many people gambling and pouring money into the place here. And so apparently some of the resorts in Las Vegas are starting to look at the idea of bringing robot waiters and robot cooks. And I'm very leery of this for two reasons. One, it means that some employee is going to lose their job, or somebody who would have been a potential hire doesn't get the job. And second, so far, these robot service people in restaurants haven't worked out all that well. Remember the burger flipping robot? And it still required a human to actually put the patties onto the griddle. And that kept breaking down, and they went back to a human burger flipper in some of these restaurants that had this thing here. As far as a robot waiter, I don't know. I don't think the technology is really there yet. But mostly it's about, we've got to put people back to work. We have got to put people back to work. There's just no two ways about it. No two ways about it. All righty. Now, apparently over in China, U.S. firms are suffering a severe shortage of workers because people are staying home because of the quarantines. And they're saying the virus is going to impact supply chains. Now, a lot of the components that go in products that we buy, a lot of products that we buy are made in China. They're slowing down. So if there's something that you want from the big box store, you better get it tomorrow, because it may not be there after a while. All righty. Already talked about that one. More than 1,100 past Justice Department employees signed a petition demanding Attorney General Bill Barr quit over his handling of the Roger Stone case. Sort of feels like the whole system is starting to tear itself apart. And we've seen this coming for a lot of years, but it looks like it's actually here. It would be a shame. I was kind of hoping that we would find a way to put this country back together, back to the republic it started out as, with our Bill of Rights intact, the 13th Amendment intact. Apparently, 1 out of every 4 renters are spending over half their income on housing. That was true for us in Hawaii, no longer true for us here in Indiana. And I'm starting to like Indiana. I miss the hula girls. Not a lot of that sort of thing here in Indiana. But especially because we are having a mild winter, it's growing on me. What can I tell you? It's starting to really grow on me. My recent hospital stay notwithstanding here. Okay, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Please stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of RBN. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. I cannot tell you how important it is that you support both of us in getting the truth out to the American people. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.